Did they give us a mic around? I think we just go because the owl's been recording. So good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Lorraine. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Okay, are we ready to start? Okay, well, welcome everyone to today's presentation. My name is Frank Gallegos. I'm from Intel Corporation up on the hill, Rio Rancho. And I want to thank you for coming to this event in the development and talent of the greater Albuquerque region. We're excited to have the opportunity to show you this report and hope it will be an excellent tool in recruitment and displaying the strong assets available in our area. So I'm from New Mexico, born and raised. I was actually online looking at the report this morning and yesterday, and I was like, man, this is a really cool report. I mean, it really demonstrates all of the cool things that New Mexico has, all the cool things Albuquerque and the surrounding area has. And the funny thing is, I knew all about that, right? I knew all about those things, and that's why I stayed here for my whole life. But I think this will be a really good recruiting tool for corporations, and I even thought about using it, which I don't know if I can, but for some of my employees and hiring new employees to show them all of the great things that New Mexico in this area has to offer. So again, I really want to give kudos to the team that worked on that. You guys did a really good job in the area specifically for the work in that. And really now I want to it's my pleasure to welcome Area President CEO Danielle Casey to the microphone to tell us a little bit more about the project. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm not wearing that same outfit. Actually, this green, for all of the CBRE people in here, this is CB green. So I wore this as a thank you and a little homage. So we're gonna get into this pretty quickly here in just a second, but I did want to share with everybody, this really was an unbelievable collaboration, and I can't say enough about how much work the CBRE team put into this, as well as, of course, our area staff, Chad Matheson, our Senior Vice President for Business Development and Research, and Daniel Schmook, who's serving as our Interim Business Development Manager. Constant meetings. I think, our teams had weekly meetings for the past several months, over and over. No stone has been left unturned, and I really don't think any data point that is pertinent to telling a great story about our region has been left out. So I'm just tremendously grateful and really just proud. A couple of other folks I'd like to mention from CBRE, Kimberly Vanderpool, of course, right here, is also here. Isabella Grassi, research analyst, Michael Stopka, did I say that right? All right, a senior graphic designer, and when you see these graphics in this work, you'll be blown away. The collaboration between our agencies has just been a tremendous partnership. This is year 3, and I'm hoping to make this year 3 of more than we can ever count. So I hope you're all as excited about this report as we are. It is designed, as Frank mentioned, to be a resource and tool for all of Greater Albuquerque, for business attraction, but absolutely we should be using this as a tool to reach out to future talent and other people that are thinking about our market as a place to live as well. So it's not just for business recruitment, it's to tell our story in a comprehensive way. So now for the unveiling, and he's going to join me up here, is the ever engaging and animated Jim Chynwith. I always like to share a little bit about Jim, and I've gotten to know him a lot as he's been a board member with Area. I don't know if you all were aware that he's got a lot of great hobbies. In addition to doing the wonderful work he does with commercial real estate, I understand that he's also in a band. So a big piece of that in his current endeavor right now is, I'm sorry she's not answering your fan mail, but he's really, really trying to get a reply so he can become a backup singer for Taylor Swift. We're working on it, and maybe Area can help you on that. He's also a competitive beetle fighter and collects a lot of vintage coins, and he's also into extreme ironing. So if anybody's into those things, Jim will help you out. But in reality, he's a big, huge supporter of Area and commercial real estate, and he's been in this role since 2004, and I can't leave out that, yes, he does also like pina coladas and being caught in the rain. So, Jim, if you will join me, we're going to share all of this data with everybody and walk them through the report.
Wow.
That was fabulous. Extreme irony.
It's a thing.
I think it's extreme
I
irony.
Googled it.
But anyway, thank you, Danielle. Area has been such a great partner of CBRE's over the years. And given their mission to improve the standard of living in our community, I think it's only natural that we help out in this endeavor and try to recruit more people and create more wealth in the community, the greater metro area. I've lived in Albuquerque for over 30 years, and I think it's the best place in the country to live. And this report hopefully will convince others of the same. Much of the information we know intrinsically, but it's really good to see it, see the data prove it out. So we'll start off with who we are. In the Albuquerque MSA, we have a total population of 923,000 people. However, as we all know, many people travel from surrounding areas for a job in our metro region. When taking this into consideration, we really have a population base of over 1 million people within a 60-minute drive of I-25 and I-40. And I'd like to do a special shout out to Klein's Corners, which really got us over the edge. When looking at our prime working age, and this one I have to read, there's a lot of numbers here. 39% of our population is between the ages of 25 and 54. Of that population, we are top 5 for diversity and top 5 for professional prime working age females, 25 to 34. And as I'm told on a regular basis, if you want something done, have a female do it for you. That's they tend to work harder and smarter than I do. So we've got a diverse workforce. The greater Albuquerque region is proud of how diverse our workforce is, and diversity is one of the most important factors leading to innovation and growth within our community. With 63% diversity among our population, we are well above the national average of 41.5%. Our labor force is also among the top 10 most diverse. So the first one was population, now we're talking about workforce. Workforce is 60% of the workers in all occupations identify as a person of color. Also, we are #1 for female aerospace engineers and operation technicians. Thanks, Chad. #2 for female mechanical engineering technicians and industrial production managers. And in the top 3 for diverse semiconductor processing technician, easy for me to say. And in addition, we are the absolute tops for female talent in the field of economic development.
Woo! Outside of that, what makes us so darn special? Diversity is just one of the reasons our region is so special. We're also being recognized as a leader in so many other exciting categories. So just to name a few, again, I know Frank knows all of these, but we're, let everybody else learn.
We can't have Frank have all.
Exactly. Just to name a few, we have been recognized as a top 25 emerging market for tech talent, one of the best cities to live and work in as a movie maker, #7 on the list of best 10 cities for recreation, something I need to spend a little more time on, and then #3 for presence of semiconductor manufacturing among similar sized markets. And we are also the #1 in highest job count for scientific R&D among similar sized markets. Thank you, Chad. He's the data guy. And then we have, of course, quality of life, right? You just can't beat it, from hiking to skiing, golfing to rafting, and museums onto art galleries. We have so many options right here at our fingertips. New Mexico is not called the land of enchantment by accident. So who's moving here then? Who's coming here and who's being drawn by all these amazing things? After seeing just a few of the things that make Greater Albuquerque so special, it's no wonder they all want to come here. These are the cities on this lovely, lovely graphic map where we're seeing the most inbound migration right now. Phoenix, Denver, Los Angeles, El Paso, Las Vegas, Houston, and so on and so forth. In terms of educating our workforce, so not just bringing people here, but how are we educating the people that we have here, as well as those that are influxing into our market? It's great to have the top talent moving into our region. And I would also add that there is no region that is not worried about also attracting in and bringing in talent, while it's also really doubling down and working on its local investment in its local population, which is critical. There's also a huge strong focus in our educating our community, obviously. I mean, one of the big reasons we chose this location today at UNM is to highlight the criticality of education and talent and this type of support. With the help of 2 scholarships, the Opportunity Scholarship and the New Mexico Lottery Scholarship, we have seen the second, let me flip my page here so I get this right, second highest increase in new enrollments from 2021 just to 2022 nationally, with thousands more New Mexicans pursuing college and career training. This is a big deal. We have 99,000 plus students enrolled in 2- and 4-year colleges, and we have also had a 19% increase in people with associate's degrees from 2017 to 2022. We are trending in the right direction. We also have so many top-ranked public and private schools for K-12 education. I don't want to try to list them today because I might miss somebody, and we're just extremely proud. So
They're in the report.
they are in the report, absolutely, absolutely. Cost of living, this is also something that we've consistently been competitive on. As you can see, Albuquerque is below the national average for cost of living and also below most of our comparable cities, the communities that we rank ourselves in from an economic development perspective to figure out how we can be the best at attracting investment and business into our communities. Affordable housing. Let's talk about this a little bit. One of the reasons cost of living is also very positive in our community is because of the affordable housing that we have. So as part of cost of living, you can see that compared to other peer cities, we actually have 63% of our adult population in Greater Albuquerque owning their own homes. And when you look at our overall average housing costs, we are below the national average and also below a lot of these other significant growth markets that we compete against regularly.
Yeah, I would say of the ones that have a lower cost of living, where do you want to live? I'd rather live in Albuquerque myself,
There you go.
but just saying.
Back to you, China.
As you know, talent is one of the largest components companies look at when they're considering a relocation. However, another major consideration is operating costs. And this slide illustrates average operating costs for both a typical manufacturing company and a software development company. And as you can see, the operating costs are lower than most other cities that we compete with, and lower than the group average. This next slide illustrates average asking office lease rates for various markets around the country. For reference, the markets that are highlighted in orange and red are more expensive. The blue and green colors represent less expensive markets. Albuquerque's on the lower end for the office rates. We get to industrial and we're a little bit higher than the region, but still competitive nationally. And this is primarily due to the fact that all that's available these days is new construction. If we were to put in some of the if we had some more existing product, so anyone who wants to leave, we can fill it back up again. But if we had a little bit more existing product, that rate would be a lot lower.
And just to add a little bit, Jim, this is why one of AREA's big initiatives is figuring out how we can support from a state level on down, accelerating site readiness and time to market.
Right, we need more product. So these were just a few of the details outlined in the 2023 report. We hope you find this information informative and useful. We're excited to start using this. We encourage you all to use this. So Frank, go ahead. It's all good. We want this information to get out. We want it to get used, and we want to bring more people to our community, and we want to bring more wealth into the community and raise the standard of living for everyone in our community. So you can access the digital report using the
QR code, it's okay. I know.
URL on the screen. Thank you very much. Or you could use the QR code, and apparently that does something.
Again, this is so cool. We've had static reports in the past. When you go into this in the website, you have the option to get a more static report or an interactive PDF. But this thing is fully interactive. There is, not to be a spoiler, there's a very cool video from Jim and I in there, as well as some other really great video footage and B-roll promoting the region in the interactive piece. So we definitely encourage you to play around in that full interactive option, because that took a lot to build and it's pretty fancy.
But not to watch the video of Danielle. Okay, so do we have Karsten?
We do. Yep.
Okay, so now, as if that were not enough statistical entertainment, we have brought to you via Zoom the world famous Karsten Rahm. Karsten is going to talk about some key data in this report from a national perspective. Of course, he's via Zoom. Karsten's the Associate Director of Global Capital Markets Research for CBRE. He joined the firm 5 years ago after a grueling stint at DePaul University, where he received his master's in economics and policy analysis. Karsten is a Chicagoan, but unfortunately his beloved Blackhawks were nowhere to be found in the NHL playoffs this year. So we are sorry for that, Karsten, but we are thrilled to have someone from the other Windy City join us. Karsten?
I'm happy to be here. I think I'm having a little bit of issue getting my video started, but thanks for that introduction, Jim. It's been a tough year for the Blackhawks, but we do have the first pick. We have the next generational talent coming through. It's great living in a big city like Chicago, where you have a bunch of professional sports teams, but unfortunately with the teams in Chicago, all they do is break your heart. So maybe it'd be better if we had a few less of those. So today I'm going to be here to talk about kind of where we see the state of the economy. Oh, there we go. Now I'm on video. Where we see the state of the economy and kind of what our outlook is at CBRE, what the impact is for the broader commercial real estate market nationally. And then we'll kind of tie it back to how do we see this playing out for Albuquerque. So kind of start things off with our economic outlook. There's a great deal of uncertainty in the economy right now, probably levels that we're not used to seeing. If you look at kind of different forecasts or estimates on where the market's going, they're all over the place. Some people are saying soft landing, some people, which would be like a no recession scenario. Some people are moving towards a mild recession. And other people are saying that we could be going for a larger scale economic downturn. Our view at CBRE is that we're heading towards a moderate recession in the US in the second half of this year. And I'm going to walk through kind of some of the key indicators that we're looking at right now. That's kind of led us to that viewpoint. So the key story in the economy still is inflation. Inflation's remained stubbornly high, and the rate of inflation has come down pretty significantly from what we saw in 2022, where inflation was at 8 or 9%. But it's still at 5%, which is well above what the Federal Reserve's target is for inflation. The Federal Reserve has two jobs, right? One is to maintain a strong labor market, and the other is for price stability. And they really haven't been doing a very good job on the price stability front. And so they're going to take a strong stance against inflation. How does the Federal Reserve do that? They do that by increasing interest rates. And we've heard a lot of news about where the federal funds rate is and what that benchmark interest rate is which kind of sets the standard for interest rates throughout the rest of the economy. The Fed has been increasing interest rates since March of last year, and they've increased these rates up to 5%. And we think that the Federal Reserve is going to hold that 5% interest rate level steady for the rest of this year before cutting towards the end of this year. Now, why are they going to hold it steady? It's still because that level of inflation is too high. So they want to make sure to tame demand a little bit here by keeping interest rates elevated. We don't think that they're going to continue hiking interest rates because they have a meeting next month later this month where they're going to set a new policy rate. We think they're going to leave interest rates as is, and that's because there are signs of inflation slowing down. And then we're also in the camp that at the end of this year, the Federal Reserve will begin cutting interest rates because the U.S. will be in a recession. High interest rates have caused trouble for the banks in the U.S. So we saw some turmoil in the banking sector this past spring. Why are higher interest rates a problem for the banks? Well, what banks do is they borrow short and lend long, right? So they're taking the short-term interest rate that the Fed sets, and they're lending things out on a longer term, such as car loans, 30-year mortgages, longer-term loans. So having that high short-term interest rate caused trouble for some of the banks, and we saw some high-profile bank failures. We do think that while the turmoil in the banking sector has settled a bit, there will be issues with the banks for the next several years. It's going to take a little bit for them to kind of unwind some of the issues that they have. But it's important to note that banks are much better capitalized than they were during the great financial crisis. So we do not expect the type of downturn in the financial sector that we saw in 2008 or 2009, nowhere near that. But we do expect that there will be some further bank failures over the coming years. What's kind of the impact of the turmoil that we saw in the banking sector? Well, one, we're starting to see banks tighten their lending standards. And when they tighten their lending standards, that means there's less capital available for the broader economy. And that has a big impact on commercial real estate because there's less money available for commercial real estate loans. It has impact on the consumer because there's less money available for mortgages, car loans, personal loans, and there's less capital available for businesses, for small business loans and commercial loans. So we think that tightening of capital availability due to turmoil in the banking sector is going to have an impact on growth, and it's also going to have an impact on capital available for commercial real estate investment. And that's where we kind of expect different types of lenders maybe to step in and fill the gap on the commercial real estate side, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult on some of the consumer spending and business loan side. So we do think that's kind of be where we start to see the first signs of an economic slowdown in the US later this year is because of that tightening in lending from banks. What's kind of some other real-time indicators that we're looking at? We are kind of seeing some signs of weakening demand. So for one, the job market is softening a little bit. There was a jobs report that came out this past week that showed that payrolls actually did grow by 339,000 jobs in May. So that's a strong job growth number still. But there's kind of other signs in the labor market that things may be tightening up a bit. We've seen the number of job openings fall. So all that talk of, there's all these open jobs that we can't fill them. How do we fill these open jobs? Well, it seems like companies are maybe pulling back on hiring a bit. So we saw job openings last year peaked at around 12 million in the whole US. Now we're at about 10 million job openings. So still a lot of open jobs, which kind of gives some underlying strength to the economy. But that number is coming down. We also saw the unemployment rate increase in this most recent jobs report. So the unemployment rate is now at 3.7%, where we saw it at 3.4, 3.5% earlier this year. So there is a little bit of signs of weakening in the labor market. There's also signs of slowing down in manufacturing activity. So what we look at CBRE a lot is the manufacturing PMI index. And we're seeing manufacturing activity at these levels historically, at the level that we're at now. It's typically when we're either entering a recession or kind of in the early stages of a recession. So we think that kind of manufacturing activity in the broader US economy is a flashing indicator right now that we are moving towards a recession. And then also retail sales are starting to slow down. And I know it doesn't feel like it. It feels like when you go out to any bar or restaurant or shopping mall or airport, there's so many people out and about spending money. But what we are seeing in some of the data is that retail sales are slowing down, and they're also not keeping up with the rate of inflation, right? So if we saw retail sales are only growing at like 2.5% year over year, where inflation's at 5%. So just the price increases alone should be pushing retail sales along if they're kind of in a really more healthy state. But we are seeing kind of that demand on the retail sales side weaken. One other thing that's coming down the pipeline, and it just came about in the last couple weeks, are student loan payments. So the student loan payments have been paused since March of 2020. That was part of when we went into the COVID lockdowns, they paused student loan payments. And those have been paused for the last 3 years. And they've effectively almost worked as a tax cut, where you have these middle class and upper middle class people with an extra $200 or $300 a month in their pocket to spend every month because of this pause in student loans. There's about 40 million borrowers in the US in total. And if they're kind of have an extra $200 or $300 a month in their pocket, that's a lot of spending power. And with this new budget deal that was recently passed in Congress, those student loan payments are starting again. And I know myself, I benefited from this student loan pause. I was not paying my student loans back during this forbearance period. And I also probably wasn't saving all that extra money. I was probably out spending it too, enjoying myself post-COVID. And I think that's what most people are doing. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a shadow that's looming over us right now, is that when those payments restart, really what's going to happen and what's the impact going to be? I think you could see a sharp decline in service sector spending, because people aren't going to have that extra money anymore. They're not going to be able to maybe go out to eat as much or travel as much or kind of do those extras that they've been spending money on over the past few years. So I think that student loan aspect is really an interesting thing to watch out for. Kind of just to tie this all together, we were seeing all these signs of flashing red, maybe red flags or yellow flags in the economy, even though broadly things are still really strong at the moment. There are kind of these flashing warnings that we may be heading towards a recession. And that's why CBRE's house view is that we will enter a moderate recession in the US in the second half of this year, which is fast approaching. How does this kind of tie back into the real estate market as a whole? So on the national level, we've seen rising interest rates, which I talked about earlier, and then economic uncertainty, which I just laid out, really impact real estate fundamentals. Office has been hit especially hard, as everyone knows. Yeah, I'm in front of you right now via Zoom. It's a lot easier to get things done with remote work. And so we've seen the office sector get hit not only by these rising interest rates and economic uncertainty, but also a structural shift in remote work. We've seen office buildings in some of the hardest hit areas down even 80% in values. Now that's probably a certain subset of buildings that are in like downtown Los Angeles, downtown Chicago, and that are a little bit older and don't have the same amenities. But there are some office buildings that have gotten hit really hard by the current conditions. But there is also a little bit of a different story on the higher end office side, where when we have offices that have a lot of amenities, and they are a little bit newer and they're well located, people are returning to work, and we're actually seeing those offices perform okay in terms of being able to maintain rents and holding up values a bit better than the broader office market. So office is kind of the hardest hit sector right now from a national perspective. It's a bit of a different story from industrial and multifamily. We're seeing industrial as kind of the favorite sector among investors right now, and the same kind of goes for multifamily, where there's been a weakening in fundamentals in those sectors recently, where we've seen vacancy rates nationally tick up a little bit. Rent growth is weakened, but overall, historically, industrial multifamily are performing very strong, and we're still seeing quite a bit of an investor interest in those sectors. And even if we see a little bit of a slowdown in the broader economy, we don't expect those two sectors to get as hard. One with industrial benefiting from a structural shift, with kind of a move to e-commerce spending and a little bit more onshoring going on in the US economy, as well as in multifamily, where we do kind of have just an overall housing shortage in the US, and home prices are very expensive. So even if consumers lose a bit of spending power, we expect apartment rents to hold up all right, because of the limited housing supply and because they can't really go and buy anything right now either, given home prices and higher interest rates. Retail is also an interesting one. Retail, I think, has kind of been the dog sector of commercial real estate for the last 5 or 6 years, but the retail story has kind of gotten a lot stronger. And part of that is because of a lack of new retail supply that's been built over the last 10 years. There just hasn't been a lot of new retail construction in the US, and populations continue to grow, the economies continue to grow. So the retail space that we have is becoming more coveted, and that's kind of really boosted retail fundamentals. And even if we move into an economic slowdown, as we're expecting, we do think that the retail real estate sector will hold up relatively well. We are seeing values get hit pretty much across all property types, probably down about 10 to 15%. There's a little bit of, differences depending on, again, which sector you're in, what region you're in. There's a lot of variability in the market right now, but it's pretty easy to at least paint that broad brush of values being down 10 to 15%. And we think values will probably bottom out in Q4 of this year. And then we'll start to see values start to recover, aside from office, which will take a little bit longer. Tying things back to Albuquerque. So I think Albuquerque will generally follow some of the same trends that I laid out, both in the US for the economy and for commercial real estate. But I do think the recovery will be a bit slower. The US economy is expected to grow at about 1% in 2024, while Albuquerque's economic growth is expected to be at about 0.5%, according to Oxford Economics. So Albuquerque will trail the national average in terms of growth a little bit. The downturn may hit a little bit harder when we see a recession take hold. However, again, we don't expect anything like what we saw in 2008 or 2009. So it's important that that's not the type of downturn that we're expecting. Unemployment rate will rise, but not by an amount that we saw 15 years ago. So even though there will be a slowdown, it won't be as bad as some of the previous downturns we've seen. And then kind of thinking a little bit longer term about Albuquerque, when I was asked to speak at this, I started doing some research about the market and started to take it from an outside perspective, because I'm based in Chicago. I've never been to Albuquerque. I really haven't even spent much time in the Southwest US. So I kind of wanted to approach this with fresh eyes. And what I kind of found telling myself as I was reviewing this report and some other things that I was reading about is kind of, why not Albuquerque, right? I think Albuquerque does have a lot of things going for it, where it can position itself well for growth in the longer term. I think one of those things was actually outlined a little bit earlier with the kind of very livable city, and kind of a city that has a lot of recreation activities in the surrounding area, like the outdoors. And what we've seen in terms of cost of living is that some of those other outdoor cities, or kind of, I guess I call them kind of the nature-focused cities that people like me from the Midwest like to move to, like Denver, like Salt Lake, have gotten exceedingly expensive over the last few years, while Albuquerque has a lot of those benefits as well, but not the same costs. So I think, as we see some of those other cities in the region really kind of become cost prohibitive from people to be able to move into that want to get out there, especially kind of younger people, I think Albuquerque will become a good option I also think that Albuquerque has a few key things that you can't build organically. And this is especially has a focus on the life science industry. I think every city wants to build out a strong life science industry, and they want to have like a life science hub. But there's three things that I think that they always kind of need. One is having a national research lab. Two, having a strong health system in the area to kind of facilitate some of that research. And then also being able to draw talent by having strong universities in the area. And Albuquerque has all three of those. So that's kind of some of the stuff that really a lot of cities will kill for, because I've seen it happen in Chicago, where we're trying to like organically build these research labs and life science labs on the north side of the city here. And there's just nothing really around it. And it's really kind of struggled to pick up here. But I think Albuquerque has kind of some more of the resources to be able to more efficiently build out a strong life sciences hub. And CBRE actually just highlighted Albuquerque in a recent life science report as an emerging hub showing promising activity. So I do think that Albuquerque can move into that direction. Do I think it's the next, San Diego? No, I think that's probably a little bit of a too lofty of a goal. But I do think that there's a lot of strong potential in the life science space for Albuquerque. So I kind of ran through here where we see things overall in the general economy, what our national views are on real estate trends, and then kind of where that ties back to Albuquerque. I know that Jim maybe wanted to open this up for a little Q&A here. So does anyone have any questions?
Anyone going once? Joe Farr.
So with respect to what's coming in the next 3 to 6 months, how do you see the availability of debt playing into, it's going to clearly impact commercial real estate, but the overall market and recession, how do you see that playing in?
I think that is going to be kind of one of the drivers over the next 3 to 6 months. Think about the drivers of a slowdown, sorry. So think about kind of all the things that have been boosting the economy recently. It's that we've had really easy debt availability, which has driven growth over the last couple of years. We've had strong consumer balance sheets from all the savings during the pandemic, and then the government stimulus that kind of came with it. And then we also had the student loan payments that were paused. So that gave consumers a lot of spending power. And now we're kind of starting to pull all these strings back a little bit, right? Student loans are getting turned back on. So you don't have that excess kind of spending in the economy. The surplus and savings that people have built up over the pandemic has been spent, right? It's been 3 years now. Inflation's been really high. People are starting to burn through that excess savings. And I think that the savings amount that people have built out will probably return to normal by the end of this year. And then we have tightening in credit availability. So people won't have as much access for money from the banks or from credit cards. And also businesses won't have that same credit availability as well. So I think that's going to kind of lead to a broader slowdown in the economy that we'll see in the second half of this year. Again, because we are in a much stronger position kind of overall than we were in 2007, 2008, where, even though consumers are burning through their excess savings, they still have a pretty good balance sheet. Businesses and banks are both in a better position than they were in 2007 and 2008. So when we do kind of reach that slowdown, I don't think it'll hit as hard as it did back then. But I do think that we will kind of experience a slowdown, and our house view at CBRE is that unemployment will raise to about 4.5% at its peak in early 2024.
Great. Anyone else? Going once. So, Karsten, is it fair to say if we had in place a program in New Mexico whereby we forgave grad school debt, you'd be out here in a heartbeat?
Yeah, I don't know. You guys would have to, if you want to start doing that, you'd have to set aside spend quite a bit of money, I think everyone would come running out there pretty quickly. But it is a way to attract talent, I guess. And we have seen, small programs like that. I know there are towns across the country that have done that, but yeah, I don't know. That's
You've come out?
Oh, me? I don't see. So what I highlighted is what I think is really cool about New Mexico is how they have all the nature and outdoors, and it's great to attract nature and outdoorsy people, of which I'm not one of them. So I'm more of a city guy. I'm more of an indoors guy than an outdoors guy. I'll come down there and go skiing with you one time, but for the most part, I kind of like inside.
Well, and we do have a hard time keeping the ice cold, but so hockey's kind of, we have a hockey team, but anyway. Well, that sounds good. We appreciate you flying in via Zoom. Let's give a big round of applause to Karsten.
Thanks for having me. I hope we can do it in person next time.
Thanks, Karsten. Danielle, do you want to wrap us up?
I would love to. Thank you so much, Jim. I want to again thank everyone. So we are going to send a follow-up. And by the way, I also want to thank the 30 or so folks that have been watching us via Zoom this whole time as well. So this is definitely a true hybrid event. So, and we pulled it off. You never know with the technical side. So I'm proud of that as well. But if you can't wait, again, check the QR code there, scan it, download, interact with the report. I do ask and encourage everybody, tweet it out, push it out, tag us, get this out on social media. There's a couple of big things that are going on with this report. We're not just launching it locally, although this is important. We're going to be doing national press efforts across the nation to really get the word out on this. We're going to be doing targeted social media, and we also just dropped in the mail today, I believe, postcards to about 550 national site selection consultants that are in our database and in our relationship management. They're all going to see this as well. So we're hoping that drums up more interest and just really better education about what's going on in our market. And with that, I have one last thing. Just as a big thank you for all the work, I'd like to embarrass Kim and bring him up here.
You have no idea how many times I got 10 PM emails from her that I was like, I'll answer that tomorrow.
Thank you so much for everything you did for us on this, on behalf of us, to you and to the whole CBRE team. But you get the flowers, so. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us in person. Please help us promote this as a tool, and we also welcome any other ideas and feedback. Have a great day. All right. I want this to take it back, to put it in the thing. It's just, yeah.
Awesome. And then we just need to turn
Okay.
this on.
Yeah, we'll handle it.